So in this video, we're going to take a look at a very recent newspaper article from The Independent. This discusses some of the items seized from Bryan Kohberger's home. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read this article out to you and stop in places and interject with my own thoughts and theories. Now, the article starts off with the following here. What forensic experts say about evidence seized from Bryan Kohberger's home in the Idaho murder case. Dr. Monty Miller, a former crime scene investigator and forensic expert, and former FBI agent Jennifer Koffendorfer explain the potential significance of items seized from Kohberger's home. Authorities have lifted the lid on alleged evidence found in the home of Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger, marking the latest development in a horror case that has gripped the nation for 2 months. A search warrant was executed at Mr. Kohberger's apartment in Pullman, Washington on the 30th of December. The same day he was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania on charges for the 13th of November stabbings of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Zaina Knodel and Ethan Chapin. A record of evidence recovered during the apartment search was unsealed on Wednesday, revealing the seizure of 15 items including hairs, receipts, a computer tower, a disposable glove, and items with peculiar stains. The record reignited a frenzy of speculation online, despite its simplicity and lack of conjecture. But what significance, if any, can actually be gleaned from the list? The Independent spoke to 2 experts, Dr. Monty Miller, a former crime scene investigator and forensic expert for the Texas Department of Public Safety, and former FBI agent Jennifer Koffendorfer for their takes on each item. Mr. Kohberger is assumed innocent until proven guilty at trial, so the experts' assessments are based solely on what police have identified as potential evidence. The stained items. In the search warrant record, investigators list several items with stains, including cuttings of a mattress cover, a quote reddish-brown stain on an uncovered pillow, and a collection of dark red spot. Both Dr. Miller and Ms. Koffendorfer told The Independent that police likely believe those stains could be blood. A reddish or brown stain is a euphemism for, "We found something that looks like blood," Dr. Miller said. It might be blood from the victims, it might be his blood. They don't know until they test it, but they'll be able to get DNA if it is blood. We don't know what the stains in the cover sheets look like. But again, they're looking for any kind of DNA, evidence that might have come from the crime scene. Dr. Miller noted that while stains on clothing and bedding are not necessarily unusual, investigators will try to link the evidence found at the Pullman apartment to the crime scene in Moscow. The likelihood that any of those stains came from the crime scene is going to be dependent on how well he cleaned up, he said. Okay, so I'll just cut in very briefly here. So we have the mentioning of the stained items here, the mattress cover and an uncovered pillow. Now obviously at this point in time, without actually testing the blood or the red substance found on those items, it's almost impossible to tell exactly where it came from. But let's try and look at this from a logical standpoint. If Bryan Kohberger had committed these crimes, would he really be going home, laying on his bed, with blood still on him? Because he seems to have done a fairly decent job, as far as we are aware, of hiding the murder weapon, even potentially the clothes that he wore that night. So would he have got home, covered in blood, or even with blood on him, and laid on his bed? And if he had, and there were spots visible, particularly on the uncovered pillow, would he not have gotten rid of that item, thrown it in the trash, or disposed of it in some way? Another point worthy of discussion is the fact that we don't actually know at this point in time the size of these stains. Were they very small, minute stains, or were they large and clearly evident to the naked eye? We just don't know. We don't know exactly what we're looking at, as I say, at this particular point in time. But when we look at what actually was recovered, this wasn't a pillowcase. Nothing of that does tell us something. It wasn't the pillowcase that had blood on it. This was on the actual body of the pillow itself. So could that go to suggest, as I say, that this was someone who maybe suffered with nosebleeds? We know that Bryan Kohberger had a rather crooked nose? Is that the best way of putting it? I mean, as I say, maybe this is someone who was literally just susceptible to nosebleeds. Maybe this was a common occurrence, a regular occurrence, hence the reason we don't have a pillowcase on the body of that pillow. Okay, so let's continue on with the article here. It states the following. The Dickies tag and receipts from Walmart and Marshalls. According to the search warrant's record, investigators also seized one receipt from Walmart, two from Marshalls, and a tag from the clothing brand Dickies. Dr. Miller said investigators could seek to prove that the items listed on those receipts and wherever the tag came from match with the clothing worn by the alleged killer. The suspect may have bought something to wear and discard, and then law enforcement found these receipts and asked, "Where are these clothes?" he said. The receipts could also reveal how long in advance the clothes were purchased, Ms. Koffendorfer noted. I think that those would indicate not only what was purchased, which is relevant to the crime, but also when, which I think is very important to see timing, to see a forethought that this was planned, Ms. Koffendorfer said. Was this just one day? Several days before? The timestamp to me is as important as what was on those receipts. The hairs, hair strands, and possible animal hair. Included on the list of seizures was a possible animal hair strand. While Mr. Kohberger is not believed to have a pet, one of the victims he is accused of killing, Gonsalves, had a dog that was at home at the time of the murders and was later found by police responding to the scene. The possible animal hair, they'll try to connect that to the dog left at the scene, according to Dr. Miller. If there's a root on that, if there is any skin on that hair, they could do a DNA test with that dog. If it's just a hair that's been shed and there is no skin, they would still be able to do a microscopical comparison and exclude most dogs, but they wouldn't be able to connect it necessarily to that dog. Okay, so let's cut in again here very briefly. Now they mention a possible animal hair strand that was recovered from Bryan Kohberger's apartment. But what I find quite interesting about that is the fact that if there is any skin on that animal hair strand, or if there's a root on that animal hair strand, they could do a DNA test with that dog, with Murphy the dog. However, if it's just an animal hair strand, so that's just a strand without anything attached to it, I guess they could say this isn't an Alsatian, this isn't an English Bull Terrier, for example. This is a Golden Doodle or a Labradoodle. They could tell you what breed of dog it is, but they couldn't say specifically that it's this exact dog. So it's going to be quite interesting what this animal hair strand relates to. Is this a cat hair? Is it a dog hair? Is it from another type of animal? I guess, as I say, we wait to see at this particular point in time. But as I say, very interesting that they can do a DNA test with Murphy the dog, depending on what is recovered at the end of the hair itself. Let's now continue on with the article here. Ms. Koffendorfer also explained that the suspect would have left behind evidence at the scene, but also taken evidence with him before leaving. She said she was surprised by how little hair was listed on the search warrant record. I would expect those items to have been transferred to the killer, and when he took off his clothing, that to then transfer to other clothing and items. So I was surprised not to see more items and more hairs, she said. The computer tower and Fire TV stick. In addition to physical evidence, investigators could be looking into Mr. Kohberger's behaviour, including computer searches, articles he read and television he watched in the weeks leading up to and in the aftermath of the murders. They may be looking at what he watched. Did he watch the news? Did he watch anything connected to the murders? Did he watch shows about crime? Dr. Miller told The Independent. Some of that might go with his PhD, or could be explainable to him. Investigators are just trying to put the whole picture together. Ms. Koffendorfer echoed that assessment, adding that Mr. Kohberger's Fire TV stick could have been paired with other apps and even social media platforms. There could be some very important information there related particularly to his searches and social media, she added. Investigators also searched the Washington State University office used by the suspect, a graduate student and teaching assistant in criminology, but did not seize any items. A vacuum cleaner's dust container. According to Ms. Koffendorfer, the content of a vacuum cleaner found at Mr. Kohberger's apartment could hold key physical evidence. If he did clean very thoroughly his place, which by the fact that we've got very few items returned, it would seem that to be true, that could contain the very important evidence, including hair and including fibres, she said. A single nitrite glove. Among the items seized by police was a single nitrite glove which Ms. Koffendorfer described as a particular finding. That's a very specific kind of glove that is extremely tight fitting so that you can manipulate things with your hands. They are a similar type to what we wear on SWAT, so we could handle flashbangs and shoot our weapons and feel, she said. Dr. Miller highlighted that investigators might have recognised the type of glove if similar material had been found at the crime scene. Okay, so now we get on to the final point here, a single nitrite glove. Now, so much has been made about this single glove. When this document came out, a lot of people were saying, well, there was a black glove found at the crime scene, here's the missing one, you know, the original or the other one was found at the crime scene, this must be the second one, which makes a pair. But I think far too much is being read into this particular glove. I mean, this is just a latex glove, for God's sake. I mean, even this lady here saying, oh, it's extremely tight fitting and you can manipulate. It's a bloody latex glove. It's just a glove that like a surgeon would wear or a car mechanic. It's nothing special. You can go and pick them up down your local supermarket. But as I say, quite a lot was made about this particular glove when it was mentioned in that document. But as you can see from the photograph, what was recovered at the crime scene was like a woolly glove. This was probably from one of the officers, may have just fallen out of his pocket after, during a search or walking around the perimeter of the property, but certainly not connected and certainly not similar to a nitrite glove. Now, before we leave today's video, if you did enjoy this content, please do give the video a thumbs up below and also subscribe to the channel to be notified of future releases. As always, many thanks for joining me for this particular video. I look forward to seeing you all again for the next one. Take care. Cheers.